The Florida Keys story, really, you all know this, is a water story. Fresh water flowing south from the Everglades, filtering through hardwood hammocks like the ones we have right outside our windows, and solution holes, reaches seagrass beds that anchor the food web and ultimately shapes the health of Florida Bay and the quality of life that we all share. Jodie Cerra is the Executive Director of Florida Bay Forever, an organization dedicated to protecting and restoring the ecological health of Florida Bay and the web of ecosystems that feed it. Jodie leads interpretive nature walks through the hardwood hammocks of Green Turtle Hammock Nature Preserve. Who here has been there? Has everyone been? I myself have not been there yet, so I'm eager to get there. Inspiring school groups and visitors alike. She develops educational programs that bring youth and families into relationship with these remarkable places and brings her energy, curiosity, and genuine enthusiasm to every single encounter, whether she's hiking through a hammock or quietly soaking in the peace of the bay. So her talk this evening, Florida Bay Forever, forever? Question mark, is a story of connection, and I think it's going to make you look at the water that's all around us differently. So please join me in welcoming Jodie Cerra.
All right, thank you so much for the great introduction. I am really, really excited to be here. I feel very privileged. Looking at the lineup for the other speakers that are going to be here, I'm a little humbled and grateful. Thank you so much for having me. See if we can get there. So I will be presenting Florida Bay Forever. We all hope, right? And as she mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Florida Bay. Just a little bit about me. As you can see, my world kind of revolves around the water, as all of ours does here in the Keys. I've got two wonderful boys that I am excited to share my passion for the water with them, as my father did. He was a science teacher. He encouraged us to question, but not just to question, but to take it to the next step and discover. And see if we could answer that question, which of course led us to 3 more questions that we would then try to answer. And that encouragement really led me to become the naturalist I am. I didn't set out to be a naturalist, but my passions and life decisions brought me here, and that's kind of what I bring to Florida Bay. I graduated Florida State in psychology, English, biology, and education. I was a couple classes away from a mathematics minor as well. Basically, I love to learn, and I wanted to learn it all. And I saw this big picture and these connections between art and science, and the college said, well, you can't major in those things. They're too separate, and it didn't make sense to me. It was all one big picture. And I brought that, I took that knowledge into being a ropes course facilitator, came down to the Keys as a Marine Lab intern. And eventually became an instructor after that. I did leave a couple times. I was a campground host at Cedar Breaks, Utah, lived in Washington State, but all environmental education, all service. I love to teach, I love to share my passion, and I never really wanted to be confined to a classroom. So I very much enjoy that outdoors, that learning, that hands-on. As you can see, what we like to do. And kind of why I do this, why I'm so passionate about this. And this kind of starts us off. In 2015 is when the big seagrass dies here. I have 2016, kind of the end of it. What do you guys think? How much seagrass, how many acres did we lose? I hear 40, and unfortunately, yes, it is the biggest number there. We lost 40,000 acres of seagrass. That was primarily turtle seagrass, which is a very important seagrass to the habitat. Losing that affected all of the surrounding areas. The sea turtles, green sea turtles, eat mainly the turtle grass. We lost all of their feeding grounds. Sponge communities were stressed out, fish nursery habitats. If you lived here, you remember it. It was very detrimental to our way of life. And that is what spawned Florida Bay Forever. Elizabeth Jolin and Steve Friedman, a couple of our founding members, got together and said, we've got to do something. We can make this better. We can fix this. Florida Bay Forever is a grassroots, not-for-profit based in the Florida Keys, dedicated to protecting and preserving the health of Florida Bay through community engagement, science-based education, and a strong support for the Everglades, that whole system. We could focus on just Florida Bay, but that really wouldn't help us. It's that whole system through the Everglades, above us, below us. This is on our website. I won't read it all. But that was what started us and where we want to move forward in focusing on protecting the Bay. But why? Why do we really care? It's our quality of life. It's a very simple statement. The health of Florida Bay equals the quality of our way of life, but it's a huge impact. And we all know this. We've heard this. We live this. If you were here in 2015-16, you know the fisheries and the effect that had on our daily lives. Recreation, fun, fisheries, businesses, families, our home. It's all tied into the health of the water. You can't separate the two.
Was that your particular bleaching event or something?
It wasn't about, it was about the salinity. So I know the corals were also affected, but the seagrass die-off was about high salinity. And really, when you think about that freshwater flow that we're no longer getting, which I'll get to, we had a high salinity. The high temperatures had a lot to do with it because they do affect the water. It was a lack of movement, too, in the water. They really attribute it to the salinity, but of course, there's other factors that play a role. But I'd have to look and see if the corals specifically that year also had an issue. But when you get poor water circulation, you also have a lower dissolved oxygen in the water, and that, of course, affects all the health. All those little bits, part of those, all of those little bits that make up all those connections in the whole. The Everglades Foundation did a study and found that over the next 50 years, the Everglades will provide over $1 trillion in natural benefits. So that's $31.5 billion a year we naturally get from the Everglades and that system. So drinking water, tourism, economy, storm protection, and flood control. They estimate that for every dollar we put into restoration, we'll get 4 back. That's an awesome return. I don't know anybody else. I don't know any interest rates that'll give you that return. So looking at that, and these pictures are from a recent trip with my family to Flamingo in the Everglades. If you haven't been recently, I highly suggest it. They've put a lot of effort and time and money into the restoration of Flamingo. It's gorgeous. But these are some of the things we saw. And this is what we're working for. When I get up in the morning, this is what I think about. This is what I want my kids to be able to see. And really what I want my kids to see is what it looked like 30 years ago. I want them to be able to see that in the next 30 years. So these are kind of what remind me why I'm doing this. Kind of all over the place. Yeah, this one was evening, and the rest, I think, were more in the height of the day. This was the morning. So I think that a lot of us here have seen this map, that natural flow, what we know the Everglades used to look like. And then we came in, and we kind of changed some things. And we made it comfortable. We wanted things to work out well for us. And unfortunately, instead of finding ways that were both comfortable for us and worked with the land, we focused on our comfort. We drained the land. You can kind of see in this picture, we had well fields pulling water out of the Biscayne Aquifer and messing up that whole system, that whole balance. I've learned a lot more about the Biscayne Aquifer lately, and honestly, it's a really cool system. To think that rock here in the Keys, so we all know we're living on an ancient coral reef, this limestone. I like visuals, so. And that's what we're living on, a porous material, natural filtration. And it's that balance. It's that flow of water at the right time. maybe not as much water at the right time, but it's a balance that we're trying really hard to mimic and restore. If you haven't heard of SERP, you should. SERP is the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. They just celebrated 25 years of trying to restore this beautiful ecosystem that we're at the bottom of. And we really need that fresh water in order for us to stay healthy. And like I mentioned, that Biscayne aquifer, that's our freshwater source. So the water slowly travels, it collects nutrients, it gets filtered, and it's this give and take of filtration and also picking up other nutrients, which brings it down to the Biscayne aquifer, which is basically a big sponge. It's limestone, rock, sand, but it acts like a big sponge. And to me, this is the coolest thing. It's almost like nature magic, but the fresh water, being a little lighter than salt water, creates this barrier and actually pushes the salt water back a little bit. They call it a freshwater lens. And that lens keeps that fresh water in the Biscayne aquifer and gives it to us. That is our biggest source of fresh water for drinking, for all the things that we use fresh water. But it also affects the salinity, the nutrient levels, and everything in the bay. Really, really make or break the health in the bay. It's not the only thing, but many. Please.
Where's the Biscayne? The upper one.
Up here? So here is Biscayne Bay, kind of in this area, and the aquifer runs right here. Good question. Yeah, I should have had that picture. But that sponge, like I said, and it's that system and those connections that keep our Florida Bay healthy. And I kind of wanted to give a big picture, an idea. I have a lot of tourists who come in to our gift shop and say, "Where's Florida Bay?" So as you can see, it's right here at that end of that system, that complicated, now we have canals, trying to figure out that whole system. We've got Florida Bay right here. And as you can see, after you have Florida Bay, you have the land, what we like to enjoy. And that is where we like to live. But the health of this area is going to affect the land as well. And I recently, having now worked with Florida Bay Forever for a couple years, I work here at the Russell Cottage at Green Turtle Hammock. I have a beautiful view. I really enjoy my office. But I've come to really, really appreciate the land. I came here as a diver. I was a tourist first, living in West Palm Beach. I came down all the time to go diving. But just in the last 3 years, I've really come to appreciate the hardwood hammock and what that is. So you've got this ancient coral reef, this line of islands, and you get a red mangrove propagule come along, add a little soil to our land. And slowly through that process, and then you get the black and white mangrove come, you get mangrove islands, and ultimately our islands here. A really unique substrate that allows for this hardwood hammock, this really unique forest that has a microclimate, different to everything in the Everglades. So imagine you just trudged through the Everglades. It's buggy, it's hot, the swamp was up to your shoulders maybe your knees in some places. And you get to this forest where it's at least 10 degrees cooler. It's really moist, there's fresh water, there's animals. It's almost like this nice, beautiful oasis. Oh, so, and that's a fair question. So Florida Bay Forever does collaborate with the village to be at the Russell Cottage, and our lease was up March 5th. They gave us a 30-day extension. And then just in the last couple of weeks, the village and Florida Bay Forever has now agreement that we're going to transition this together. So it's really the best of both plans. I'm really excited. This will be our home. We'll have a room there. We'll be there 7 days a week. And at the same time, we're able to invite, and the village is really spearheading that, inviting other nonprofits as well to help run the visitor center. So I'll be helping them understand the unique habitats and stuff like that. But then we'll have more people on the ground. We'll be able to offer hopefully more environmental education and such like that. This preserve is Green Turtle Hammock Nature Preserve. It's in Island Murata. If you know where Green Turtle Restaurant is, it's just a little south and on the bay side. It's really easy to miss, but we do have a big brown sign.
So the hammock, a lot of trees like that.
And I'm gonna get into a little bit more. So, and what he's pointing out is the gumbo limbo tree right here. And that is a staple tree in our hammocks. You find them all over. And I really like the gumbo limbos. There's a lot of unique things about them. We call them the tourist tree, right? If you guys haven't heard that, it's because they're red and peeling. Our tourists come down, forget sunscreen, or decide they're going to get a tan. Don't put on sunscreen, and they end up looking like this, nice and peely. But the really cool next step to that is gumbo limbo sap is really good for after sun lotion. So natives and such used to boil it down and make a nice lotion to use for after sun and kind of soothe their skin. And so I wonder if that's kind of where the tourists came from. Their bark is also green, and they photosynthesize right through their bark. So even if they don't have leaves, if they're going through that process, they still photosynthesize and they still work really hard. Now, compared to our northern trees, who kind of take a break, they go into a little bit of hibernation, and they don't work as hard. Our trees work hard all year. Who's going to live longer? Somebody who naps or somebody who doesn't? Yeah. So our trees in the hammock don't tend to live as long as, say, some of the northern trees. And it's a hard process for us to know. There's no concrete way to determine how old a lot of these trees are. We don't get the rings, and when they drill into it, a lot of that stuff is not figured out how we can do that yet. But our trees in the hardwood hammock, like I said, tend to be a little younger. We'll talk about some of the exceptions. But gumbo limbos are really cool too. They're kind of, if they break off during a hurricane, they're really flexible, so they take that wind well. But if they do break off and they can get settled in the ground, they'll start to grow in a new place. And at Green Turtle Hammock, we actually have the champion tree. This one right back here is the biggest one in the United States. So definitely come out and see that. There's a nice little plaque so you could know which one. But it's not, a lot of people ask me, why does it get that name? And it's not just about trunk size, and actually in the hardwood hammock, it's much more about reach and how far their branches are and even how twisted they are. Your goal in the hardwood hammock is to get the most amount of sunlight. So the bigger twisted branches are really a benefit. And we keep this area clear, the village keeps this clear, but you can kind of see as we go along some of the pictures, it gets really dense. The hardwood hammock is a really dense place. Just kind of a close-up view of that gumbo limbo, the champion tree. We're about to start one of our guided hikes here. And another tree you'll find in a hardwood hammock is our mahogany tree. These were really popular to make furniture from. Parts of the ship sometimes, but really furniture. The really wealthy people in the Keys were here. And they almost cut this down to extinction making that furniture. Like I said, it had a high value. They'd ship it all over the place. And it really came close to becoming extinct. But a lot of the mahogany, you guys have seen all the time their seeds. Their seeds make up a ton of the ground litter here in the Keys. And I know you guys have seen them. This is kind of the outside. So that's the outside of a mahogany seed. This is the inside. You can see all those little things are the seeds. And so this would fall. This is a little guy, but when they're bigger, they would fall and break open, and those seeds are helicopter seeds. And if I can get one to do it. Yeah. They circle down just like a helicopter. And so that helps disperse them. It gives a nice wind disbursement. I also really like them, and this is kind of where I get into those art and science connections, but these are a great canvas. You can paint on them. I use Play-Doh to kind of make a flower or a design, and then the kids come and they paint them. We have sea grape leaves that you can paint, and these are actually the original postcards. So the Island Murata post office will still send them. Put an address, put a stamp on a sea grape leaf, and they will send it. So we've got those canvases and that art all around us that we can use. Another tree in the hardwood hammock is our poisonwood. And if you don't know how to identify poisonwood, I definitely suggest listening up because it is a very intense rash. And I see a couple people smiling because you know somebody who had it, or maybe even you had it. It is a really intense rash, but as you can see, this is a poisonwood right here. You get those orange spots from the flaky bark. When it rains, that orange is very vibrant, very bright. When it's sun bleached and really dry, that really bleaches out and it's a lot harder to see. The best way to identify a poisonwood are these black spots right here. And we got a couple here. That's that oil oozing out. And a lot like glitter, once it's on something, that oil just spreads everywhere. The good news though is dish soap gets it off really easily. And getting it off the sooner the better. I've met some people who had really bad rashes with this. I knew a friend who stood under a tree when it rained, and she had the red lines from the water drops. So definitely take a minute, make sure you can identify that. A lot of people go, well, I went into the woods and I came out with this awful rash. This is the guy. But we want to keep these. These are super important to our environment. I have a lot of guests who ask, well, why don't you just take them all out? I see you taking out other non-native species. And that's because these have seeds with the highest fat content, almost 3 times as much as other seeds in a hardwood hammock. And they think this is what allows the migrating birds not only to get to their next spot, but have their young when they get to the next spot. So the crowned night pigeons are a big one we see twice a year. They're feeding on the poisonwood berries. So it's still really important, even though it hurts us. It's part of that system and connection. I like this picture because I do have, there's a poisonwood. You can see the black oil. And over here is a pigeon plum. And a pigeon plum is often mistaken. You can see they're kind of close, especially when those get bleached out. But what I really like about these is these trees are growing so close that they have a natural graft. And we can see this here, but underneath, the roots are all growing on top of each other and touching each other and communicating. Our trees talk, which I just think is so cool. They warn each other. If there's a fire coming, they'll say, quick, fortify your bark and send out some sap, get more fire resistant. If there's a disease coming, they can talk. They can share water. If one tree is lacking and another tree has a better source, they can actually share those water, those nutrients in a storm. It's this diversity, it's this teamwork that allows that ecosystem to thrive. After a fire, after hurricane, after tragedy, the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more likely it is to survive, to do well after that tragedy. Do a little time check. Ooh. It's chemical signals. I won't pretend to understand all of the details that I could give to you, but from what I understand, it is chemical signals that they give to each other. Couple other trees in our hardwood hammock. We have a strangler fig, and I really like this guy. He is marked if you were to come out on the trail. He's huge. He's one of the biggest strangler figs I've ever seen. Usually it's just kind of a little wraparound of another tree that you see. But unlike most trees that start with a seed in the ground and grow up, these guys, hopefully their seed lands at the top of another tree and they grow down. That relationship starts as mutualistic. They both benefit. But at some point it usually turns, I'm not sure if parasitic is the right word, but for the one tree, the strangler fig will start to take over. Now, depending on the tree's life cycle, that tree might be dying anyway. They found this relationship isn't quite as negative as we originally thought. Over here, we have an ironwood tree. I really like the ironwood tree. I did put in a sign, trying to screw in a sign to an ironwood, black ironwood. It was quite interesting. I had to get some help. It's pretty intense. It's a nice, dense wood. It does sink in water. And it doesn't have much give. A lot of the trees in the hammock have a lot of give. You can hear them swaying. This has almost none. And in a hard enough wind, it will shatter, just like glass. Now, I'm sure a lot of you walking through our hardwood hammocks have seen these little depressions in the rock, and those are solution holes. Solution holes are small natural depressions in the limestone. It just gets eroded away a little faster, a little different than the surrounding limestone. Usually there's a break in the hammock above, so that rain is pounding on that particular area. But solution holes are a big reason we have life in the Keys at all. It was a freshwater source. Now, when we had that system working, the Everglades coming down, the Biscayne Aquifer was full, and that was working well. We also had freshwater springs here in the Keys. And so you had these solution holes that were filled by both those freshwater springs underneath and the rainwater on top. So you just went through the Everglades, there's tons of saltwater and alligators, you come to this beautiful hardwood hammock, and there's fresh water. Nice, cool, fresh water. And what people didn't realize is they were drinking that, they were drinking basically a daily vitamin. If you think, so I tell the kids there's two definitions to solution. One is like a math problem. The other one is dissolving something in liquid, usually water, but not always. So when you make tea or coffee, you are actually making a solution. That tea and coffee is becoming part of that water. When our solution holes, the same thing happened. Nutrients, vitamins, all get absorbed into that water. And the natives here were probably a foot taller than the Spaniards when they showed up. Scared them a little bit. And they attribute that a lot to the solution holes. So solution holes also affect the salinity in our bay. They're going to filter the water out and add nutrients at the same time, and all of that is that balance in Florida Bay. Some of our littlest visitors or residents here in the Keys, not visitors, residents, we do partner with Crustacean Plantation. They are really, this is much more about education and understanding. Hermit crabs, especially the purple pinchers, we're discovering is probably a keystone species. They really affect the quality of the soil in our hardwood hammocks. And they're, despite their name, have very large communities. They talk, they plan dates. Two hermit crabs will get together, and then 3-4 weeks later, you'll see them come back and exchange shells. And they have a whole hierarchy, they have a social life, all of those things, but we're taking their homes. And it seems an interesting thing the first time that Angela, who runs this, said this to me, you know, if you were walking on a trail and you saw an empty bird nest, you wouldn't pick it up and take it home. That's a bird's home. Well, a shell is a hermit crab's home. And just a quick, most hermit crabs don't have a hard lower abdomen, so they have to find a shell or some sort of protection. And the glass and the trash that a lot of them are picking up, unfortunately, doesn't provide the home they need. And so the big thing, I do actually have shells that are clean. If anybody wants to take one home, you're welcome to put it in your backyard, anywhere in the Keys. These are good to have. Like I said, they're clean, they're not colored. Painted shells are not great for the hermit crabs. They actually eat the top of here, and they customize their home. They want their doorway to fit them, but they'll eat the paint. And not toxic to us is still toxic to them. So from our littlest creatures to our biggest system of the Everglades and that flow of water. We've kind of talked about the different pieces of South Florida, but they're not separate stories. It's all one system. And that system is our home. The Florida Bay isn't abstract. It's our drinking water. It's our fisheries. It's our reef. It's our children discovering solution holes and learning about hermit crabs. Every action we take, planting a tree, restoring fresh water, exploring, learning, teaching, all of this strengthens those connections and strengthens our resolve. We can fix this. We definitely can. Resilience requires connection between land and water, science and action, and between all of us. These are some of the programs that we offer at Florida Bay Forever. I do hikes. My experiments really are my favorite thing to do. Lots of hands-on, get the kids involved, and even in the adults. The Rosen experiment involves sugar cubes and popcorn and pretzels. So we get to have a snack and see the different rates of erosion. Really trying to make science fun and hands-on. We do also have a speaker series, and we focus kind of on what's going on politically. So like we started, so Florida Bay Forever? The answer really depends on what we do together. It's that connection from big to small and everywhere in between. This is just a screenshot of our website. If you go to this link, that will give you the phone number and the email for all of our elected officials. Politics were not what I thought I was getting into when I started as executive director of Florida Bay, but I have to, and we all have to. We have to stay informed. It doesn't mean I'm asking you to run to be a senator. It means I'm asking you to stay informed and to get involved, make phone calls, send emails, know what's going on. We had a really dangerous bill in both the House and Senate, 433 and 290, had language in both of those bills, House and Senate, so if both of those pass, anybody who spoke poorly about agriculture could get sued. Thanks to Captains for Clean Water and all of us, the language in those bills were taken out. But that's thousands of emails, thousands of calls. That's emailing Jim Mooney and Rodriguez. And we had a town hall in December where we invited other organizations to come and talk about the different bills that's going on. We invited Jim Mooney and Rodriguez to be part of that, and they came. Jim Mooney gave a great explanation of SB 180, and he promised us he was going to fix it. So we're still definitely waiting to see that. There's some stuff going on right now. Your voice matters has a huge pull, so much more than you know, so much more than I realized 2 years ago. Staying involved, becoming a citizen scientist. I know a few people in this room. REEF is awesome at that. They get people involved, they get people going, and I'd highly suggest becoming a citizen scientist. And it's in so many different areas. You can do it from your backyard.
What are some examples of citizen science?
So the best example is going to be REEF brings people out to the reef and in the water and help with hands-on restoration. Would be the big one of the most exciting ones that I know of. But there's online, a lot of it's identification. So teaching yourself to identify birds or using a songbird app to write down all the, to record the birds that you see. If you go online and Google citizen scientists, it depends on your passion. What are you excited about? What do you want to know more about? And that's the subject that I would suggest. And I'm sure there's a forum. If there's not, if you're not finding it, please reach out. I don't think I put contact information, maybe kind of. This is a QR code for our website, but on there is my email. If you come up and you're not finding citizen scientists in your passion, give me an email, we'll figure it out. I'll help you find something. But that action is what is going to make a difference. And we will, and we are. That seagrass die-off in 2015-16 time, right now, everything that SERP has done, everything that restoration has accomplished, we think is why there wasn't a big seagrass die-off this past year. The salinity, the heat, the conditions were there. And there was a lot of concern that we were going to have a massive seagrass die-off. And they think because of the restoration work we've done so far, we didn't see that. So I know it's hard when you just we're not seeing something and that's good, it's harder to get excited about something that's not happening. But it's there. We see the results. We see that it's fixing. Just some things coming up. We do have an Osprey cam on our website. Come to our website, get informed. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.